It's really, really, really okay to celebrate yourself because you fucking live once. You live once. And if you're apologizing for being confident or having a voice or reining yourself in, I know this is such a cliche, just because you're worried about how other people are going to react. But the thing is, I could tell people that and it would fall on empty ears because you have to have that epiphany yourself.
Hello and welcome to the Courageous Leaders podcast. I'm Joanna Howes, your host and founder of The Change Creators. We focus on helping leadership teams build trust, alignment and cohesion to win together. On today's episode, I'm very excited as we are joined by Amy Kean. Amy is the CEO of Good Shout, a social learning company that helps people find their voice. Across her career, she's led innovation for ad agencies, released a best-selling book, written a sold-out play, launched an effective diversity charity, taught at various universities, and has delivered not one, but 2 impactful TED Talks. I hope you enjoy it. Amy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you. I'm excited to see where we go.
So am I, because I think it's just going to be a bit of an ad lib. Yeah, let's play conversation. But I do like to start with just finding out, what has been a courageous moment for you?
An action of sheer bravado was releasing a book that had the word fuck in the title without an asterisk that every publisher I contacted said wouldn't sell. And it did. It became a bestseller. So that was, when you look back and you think, oh, I can't believe I did that. I wrote a book called The Little Girl Who Gave Zero Fucks. I got it illustrated by the most amazing illustrator. Every single publisher I contacted said, nah, that's not going to work. So I worked with a publisher called Unbound, where you crowdfund the upfront costs to prove that it will sell. I did that in 16 days. I made, I think, something like 16 grand in 16 days. We released the book and it became a bestseller. So I'd see that as cockiness and bravado.
I love it.
And maybe not courage.
I see it's courage to start with, the fact that you even wrote a book. Like the courage to actually sit down and go, I'm going to put my thoughts on paper and find the time to do this. Because that's a powerful title. What was behind you going, right, I need to write this book?
I generally tend, and I wonder if most creative people are the same, I can only create something based on a surge of emotion. Sometimes that emotion can be joy. Often it's not. So when I wrote The Little Girl Who Gave Zero Fucks, I was living in Singapore. And I was an immigrant in Singapore and working in an advertising agency that was filled with other immigrants from Britain and America and Australia. And the atmosphere in that organization was terrible, really negative and extremely claustrophobic. And my confidence, I was head of strategy. I had an amazing job across the whole of Asia Pacific, and my confidence was at an all-time low. And I'd never really worked in a toxic environment before, and that was it, dear God. And the only way that I could even fathom reclaiming my confidence was to write a book. Wow. Was to write a book about not giving any fucks. And so the entire book is based on, it's set in like a fairy tale land in this dystopian place where every little girl has a basket of fucks that they carry around with them all day. And every time someone hurts you, they humiliate you. Yeah, they talk about your body shape, they embarrass you, they anything. Anytime someone does something, you have to reach in your basket and give them a fuck. And the character, LED Rose, decides one day to see what would happen if she didn't give any of her fucks away. And that girl was me. So I wrote it as just a way, I suppose, it was a form of visualization and manifestation. If I could write it down on paper and put it out into the world, then maybe I could do it too.
Sounds like it had been very therapeutic as well.
Oh my God, incredibly, incredibly. And then normally, when you're going through something, there's a likelihood that many, many other people are going through it too.
Yeah. Well, you even listen to you, I'm going, another person who's had another toxic experience. I had the same. I had exactly the same. When I turned up in this company full of confidence, left 8 months later pretty much broken, having to take my husband to my first coaching training because I couldn't even walk in the room on my own. But so it's really interesting thinking about, you put that energy into writing a book. I put it into setting up a business. It's really funny though that those moments of brokenness and losing yourself can actually sometimes be the fire you need. I don't want anyone to go through it, but actually sometimes it's the fire to go, no, I'm not standing for that anymore and I'm going to make a change.
I think that's the really sad thing is there's only once in my life where I've hit rock bottom, and it's absolutely that time. There's something quite powerful in thinking I have no choice but to get up and sort my life out. And the really horrible thing is that I believe that it made me a nicer person. I believe that it made me more courageous. All of those things. You know, at the time, Xanax is very easy to get in Singapore. I became addicted to Xanax, you know, all of these, and then would go to yoga, like all of these things that I tried to do just to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
And it turned out kind of magically that making a thing was that final act that made me feel better. But what you said about, 8 months is all it takes. I work with so many women who confidence is the most fragile thing we own. I truly believe that. Second is our voice. And those two things are the things that are going to get us through life.
Yeah. And that leads me to going, because you set up Good Shouts.
Yeah.
What was your story that then, because I love the story that's now created the book. What was the story and was the reason Good Shout became?
I genuinely think every founder has to have an origin story. Like, you have to. And if you don't, it just doesn't. And so it started with launching a charity, actually. So for many years, when I worked in advertising, was the token woman. For many years. I've been around for 20 years. So I would always be the only woman on a lineup at an advertising conference. I used to work in futurology and innovation when I worked in advertising. So I'd be like, woo, the future's, making all these predictions that none of them have materialized. But the job is jazz hands, basically. But I would get so frustrated being the token woman. And I would go to conferences and I'd sign in. You know, when you sign in, you're like, oh, I'm a speaker. They would be surprised that I was a speaker because I was a woman with a squeaky voice and an Essex accent.
Nice.
And which is the best kind of voice to have, I think.
Essex girl here, I'm with you.
We're such a good people.
Should just talk about that, how good Essex people are.
And I noticed, particularly in advertising, all I was seeing was all white male lineups, wannels. And me and a few of my industry peers decided to create, it was like a charity, but a non-profit activism entity called DICE, which stands for Diversity and Inclusion in Conferences and Events. And what we did was create a charter based on the Equality Act, the 2010 Equality Act, which helped events organisers in every industry curate lineups that actually represent Britain. The race, the age, the sexuality, the gender, etc. And by doing that, we were forcing these curators that were living in their tiny little bubbles, forcing these curators to actually think about the voices of people that weren't white men. And because the reason being, if anyone looks on a stage, conferences in industries are actually more important than you might immediately think, because they represent the industry, they represent the future, they represent thought leadership. And if you look on a stage and you don't see anyone like you, why would you think that you belong?
Yep.
So we created this charity and the activism entity, I still don't know what to call it. And what I realised, however, when we created this, was the events organisers would say, but we're asking all the women and all the women are saying no, which is a tiny bit true.
Yep.
So what I realised was that women say no to speaking opportunities probably about 100% more than men do. Women often need to know that they are wholeheartedly qualified to speak on anything before they'll say yes. They're also more likely to pull out of events and conferences.
Okay.
Obviously there's life. Mm-hmm. Women are more likely to care for kids. There's a bunch of stuff going on, but also nerves and the fear of being judged unfairly. And so what I realized was that there's actually a far greater problem there. And so I created, just to fix that problem, my original company was called Practice Makes Unperfect. And it was just designed to teach women public speaking, realizing that you don't have to be perfect and you can get flustered. You can be an introvert. You can have an accent. All of that. You don't need perfect hair, all of those things that we get judged for. And then Practice Makes Unperfect turned out to be, and I started it during COVID, turned out to be so ridiculously popular, it blew up.
Wow.
And then I created Good Shout. And Good Shout, in a nutshell, in any way that you use your voice, we provide training in.
If you're enjoying this episode and finding it insightful, I want to take a moment and remind you, if you haven't already, to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a small action, but it makes a big difference. Not only will you be the first to know when an episode drops, but it really helps us to continue to create this content for leaders like you. And I'd love to hear from you. So if you've got thoughts, questions, or ideas, feel free to drop them in the comments. Also, if you want to explore how my leadership training and coaching can support you and your team, then drop me a DM and we can have a call. Thanks so much. Now let's get back to the episode. I just love it. And I think it is that whole thing of finding your voice, but then really being able to project and create impact with your voice. But it's that starting point of finding. And I remember with me, when I first started doing events, and we're definitely going on to, you mentioned introvert there, we're going to go through that in a minute. But when I started doing events, I would notice that my voice would croak in the first 30 seconds. And people say, well, that just shows that you're nervous. So immediately I was like, I've got to stop the croak, I've got to stop the croak. And then eventually I was like, do you know what? I'm fine if my voice croaks to start with.
Yeah.
And it's okay if I'm a little bit nervous because I'm human. The minute I stopped worrying about the croak, it went. It was bizarre. I stopped focusing on it.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh. And now, I say 3-4 years ago, I started to get on stage. I'd shake, my heart would race. Now I can't wait to get on stage then.
Yeah.
And do you see that in the women you work with? Actually, you suddenly realise it's not that, once you do it a few times, it's not that scary.
I mean, you're a case study. That's what you've described is how it should be done. Nerves are psychologically absolutely fascinating. Evolutionarily, they make perfect sense because millennia ago, in the time of cave people, if all eyes were on you, it meant you were about to be attacked. It meant you were probably about to die. And so when you have 100 people looking at you, your body is just like, are we okay? Are we okay? Are we okay? And then the trick, which you've managed, is to get the brain talking to the body and the body talking to the brain so that you can reassure yourself that you're okay. That's come from you having enough proof that you're really good.
I think you keep practicing, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. But the thing with nerves is I always tell people not to judge themselves for being nervous because there's a lot of shame attached with being nervous. And so if you get nervous and then you judge yourself and then you feel shame, that's a lot of negative emotions you're feeling at the same time, which is when women in particular tend to fear being nervous, which means that you get even worse because then inevitably every human being gets nervous. Whenever I do a conference, my body is like on fire. I love it. But what I think you've learned to do as well is you just ride it.
Yeah.
And reframe it and think, instead of thinking, oh God, everyone's looking at me, think, how great is this that everyone's looking at me?
Yeah, and this is the whole thing, because you talk about confidence there. I talk a lot about certainty. And when someone said to me, you need to have more certainty in yourself. And I was like, what the hell's that? No one, not even had a teacher, a pen. No one said that to me before.
Yeah.
And I was like 40 years old hearing this for the first time. And I just have certainty that actually whatever happened, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it's probably another way of saying back yourself.
Yeah.
And I suddenly found that actually if I could have certainty in myself, it wasn't about waiting to be confident or waiting to be ready. It's just certain that even if I lose my train of thought, which has happened to me, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And when I did lose my train of thought, because of the certainty, I was just able to go, oh, hang on a minute, give me a sec, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And just went back to it. Versus old me would have gone red and panicked and hot. And it's like actually being okay that even if you lose your train of thought, the audience are with you. They want you to do well and they'll support you. And I think it's in that moment, the more you have certainty, you do it, then you get the confidence, is what I'm learning.
That's incredible. I've never heard that word used in that context. And I really, really like it. A good shout training is, someone's described it as skydiving for your voice. People sign on to do our courses without knowing what they're going to do, which I think is the sign of such an amazing person. They know the results because they see, and we teach all genders, they see people coming out the other side of our courses going, oh my God, what happened? I'm a new person. I have a different attitude. It's partly because, so I'm a psychosociologist, so I weave all this stuff in. Psychology and sociology is grounded in experimentation and science and anticipating certain results. So we tend to know, there's no surprises for me anymore in terms of our training. But what we like to do with Good Shout and the experience, you are on edge the entire time. The entire time. We're like lobbing surprises out. Now do this. You're going to be interviewed on live TV. Now do this. Now do this. And the adrenaline and the nerves is just constant for either it's like 3 hours a week or 2 hours a week is constant. And so many of our participants say at the end of our sessions, they either need to glug an entire bottle of wine or like they need to have a lie down, but they feel really energized. So the reason why we do that is because you're constantly getting proof points that you can handle anything. Yeah, you can handle anything.
And you know, I think you've maybe realised, because I did a similar training when I was in Melbourne, and people were like properly ugly crying with what they had to be put through. It was like the hardest week. It was like 8 a.m. till about midnight. We were like they literally, because even when we finished, we had to prep for a talk the next day. And I do think actually, and this is why I massively wanted you on the show, because I just think everyone should go and do what you teach. That training, I think, helped me so much as well, because they just push you to your limit where you do sort of go, I can do it. Oh my God, if I could do that, I can do it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You have to, I think as a teacher, you have to allow people to surprise themselves, because you can't, and I have such beef with confidence coaches, confidence training. Because you can't just shout at someone, be confident. You can, yeah, you can do this. You're a goddess. You're a goddess. You can't, that's not going to work. It doesn't land. It doesn't embed. You have to give people the tools to surprise themselves, and then they'll believe it. Like if I shouted at you, you're confident, you might, and I said it in a really amazing way, still like that, you might believe it for 10 seconds.
It won't stay. No, you got to feel it. It's got to be, and sometimes it just needs to be built and stacked. And it's also, I say, like, look at the evidence. Keep stacking the evidence. Don't stack the stuff that didn't go so well. Keep stacking the stuff that did go well. Train your subconscious to go, you can do this.
Yeah.
Something else I am fascinated about, which we only thought to talk about when you walked in this morning. So I realised I made an assumption wrongly, and I always tell people don't assume things, that you would be an extrovert because you talk about the voice and Good Shout and getting people on stage and their personal presence. And it was so interesting when we were talking, you said, actually, no, you are completely introverted.
Yeah.
And then you said to me that you do like half-day workshops twice a day. And I'm sitting there going, how? Because as an introvert myself, I'm like, the energy that must take from you. So for the introverts really listening, what can you advise? How do you do this?
There's an element of, I call it beast mode. And for people that go to the gym and take it really seriously, they'll know about beast mode. That's not me. I've heard people talking about it. But there's a psychological process called the Batman effect, which there's a brilliant, I think he's a neuroscientist called Ethan Kross, wrote a book called Chatter, which is about our inner monologues. And it's a game changer, like an absolute game changer of a book. He talks a lot about something called the Batman effect, which is really simply the process of leaning on an extra version of you. By extra, I mean OTT, not one other. In the same way that Beyonce has Sasha Fierce, David Bowie had Ziggy Stardust, but so many artists, etc., had an alter ego that they channeled in specific situations. I'm not comparing myself to Beyonce, although, oh my God, how amazing.
Look at your shoes.
Could I sing? Could I
go for it?
But it's psychologically proven to be effective. So the Batman effect it originated with kids that had problems with socialization. They were shy, or from a neurodiversity perspective, just didn't find it that easy. Those kids are told to seek advice from the superhero version of themselves. It makes them bolder. It makes them braver. Makes them mix with other kids. I think that's beautiful.
Lovely.
It works on adults too. And so I have a beast mode, as an introvert, I get knackered even around a small group of people. I was saying to you earlier, I'm almost pathologically introverted, so socially awkward, like all of those things, incredibly self-aware, etc., etc. I have a beast mode, which is, it's like a cape or a suit that I put on, which is still me.
Yeah.
It's still totally me, but just the energy is more, the intelligence actually is more, I'm more sociable. And that's a version that I wheel out for conferences, workshops. And that's really nice actually, because when you're a little bit extra in those situations, learning situations, you make the participants feel reassured that you're the silly one in the room, like you're willing to, you know, all of those things.
I can do it. I'm just reflecting. I'm just picturing myself at my event when I was dancing in heels doing the Running Man to MC Hammer. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I've got one of those modes I just hadn't realised.
Yeah, I think you do.
I still find just the energy in terms of, if I think of my week going, if I was doing half a day's workshops every single day, I just know, like, I'd go home and my husband would not get the best version of me. I wouldn't be able to talk anymore. I wouldn't be able to listen anymore. I wouldn't be able to see friends. How do you keep it sustainable though for your health?
Well, when I first started out, I could do one workshop a week. That's what I started out doing. And just as demand has increased, like it's taken me about 3 years to get to this place where my body allows me to do this. And my brain actually, because there's a lot of memorizing in this job. And especially when you're running workshops, you'll know this from just working with people or being on stages where there's any kind of interactivity, you really have to pay attention.
So the listening is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you have to be so alert, but also to people's body language and if people are flagging and anything like that. I tend to have a series of months where I will do 3 workshops a day, just power through, and then I'll have to take a month off.
So that's how then you recharge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helping my brain make a bit more sense of it. You do recharge.
Yeah.
Then if that was for 12 months, that would,
I think it would damage
so much out of it.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone too far? Have you not caught it in time ever where you go, I didn't recharge in enough time and it caught you out a bit?
I don't know. I hear a lot of people talking about burnout, and I think that's a tricky word. I think these words that have found themselves into the everyday vernacular, burnout, overwhelm, it's subjective and different for everybody. And I believe in clinical stress and I believe in severe exhaustion. Those are clinical, those are real things that a doctor can diagnose you with. I think if I ever had, then I would know about it.
Yeah. So you've got quite a nice rhythm of going, I know what I can do and I know when I need to stop.
Yeah.
That's really, really nice. I think a lot of people listening in ad agencies working like crazy at the moment, that skill of knowing when to pull back, I think is so important.
Oh my God. I know a lot of people who have been, obviously I worked in ad agencies too, but I always had a different job. I was head of innovation, dancing in the corner in silver Converse. But people work 60-hour weeks. I think it should be illegal.
Yeah.
And the way that clients speak to you in advertising agencies is something great. Yeah, it's not normal.
It's not normal. You just made me think, if we go to common sense here, you think how much agencies are now having to invest in wellbeing training, mindset training, mental health support, the amount of days that they've got people off because of this, and it's growing. You'd think by now we'd learnt to manage the hours better, or not to let pitches go overnight, or not to say yes to 5 pitches at the same time. You'd think there's enough now to say something needs to change.
They don't care. They don't care. There will always be a workforce
that will do it.
Yeah. I've been on leadership teams in agencies, like as senior as you can get, and I've very rarely had genuine conversations about well-being. Like genuine, is she okay?
Yeah.
Not about me, just people. It's that's the problem. You can have as many mental health first aiders as you like. If you don't care and you're fully aware that if someone leaves, you can replace them within a couple of weeks.
So what we're doing is putting lots of plasters over the problems. We're not solving the root cause.
That's exactly it. And you're not going to solve a problem if you don't care about it.
Challenging one. And that could be a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to internal. I love the fact of, helping people find their voice. What have you seen in terms of, so the people you've worked with, and you see the life changing now, the success that they're having, and it must be, one is like so brilliant that they suddenly got this personal branding, they've got more followers, they get the jobs and the promotions they want. At what cost does that come to some people?
Oh, what do you mean?
So in terms of how do people around them allow for that change to happen and giving them that space to change and grow?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I was having a conversation. I don't coach many people. I hate the word coach, by the way. My sold out London play was about the dark side of life coaching. I'm not a fan of the word coach.
Do you mind saying why?
I've only had one session with a life coach. I can't even say the phrase life coach without smiling. I had one session with a life coach. It was a taster session, as they often do. And she talked about her divorce the entire time.
Oh.
And then over the year, and I obviously didn't follow up, but I just thought, wow, that's like, are you okay? Should you be doing this? And then over the years, I've encountered many, I'm going to say it, women who are similar. The life coaching space is embarrassingly unregulated. For a laugh, during COVID, I became a life coach in 6 hours when I was locked in my house. Like, you can.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
You can. It's really dangerous. You're dealing with people's self-esteem. You're dealing with their brains. You're dealing with their relationships, all of that stuff. And it's an incredibly codependent space as well. My play group was about a woman called Genevieve de Beauvoir, who had failed in every other aspect of her life, had so many problems and biases and negative traits, and decided to become a life coach. So that's so I coach
in exclamation mark.
Teach, train,
Support, guide.
People, only a handful of people one-on-one, because as an introvert I hate it. It drains me.
So the one-on-one drains you more than group?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I'm the other way.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, it kills me. I can only do a 90-minute one-on-one session in a day. Otherwise, I would be wiped out. I don't know why. I don't know the psychology of that, actually. Yeah. Anyway, So I only really work with very, very successful people, CEOs, CCOs of like massive global entities who don't have time to attend a course and a series of workshops. And I'm working with a woman who she's director level, like mega director level, and she's had the most incredible year. She's won 6 awards. She's smashing it. She's found her voice. She knows exactly what she wants to say. She's doing it with integrity. She's part of all these like industry groups where she has this incredible voice, and she doesn't feel great because she's noticed that people are treating her differently. She's noticed more sniping. She's noticed more backhanded compliments, more critique, more negativity thrown at her. Oh, you're
doing this now.
Yeah. And it's actually really depressing.
Yeah.
And no, I don't think anyone talks about that enough, particularly as women, I'll be honest, because women on women is still the way that we are competitive with each other is so grounded in the patriarchy and how the patriarchy has encouraged us to talk to each other and see each other as threats constantly. No one talks about that side of success. When you put your head above the parapet, like tall poppy syndrome, there's going to be a handful of people that aren't very nice to you.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of courage. I remember the first time I put my first post on LinkedIn, I thought I was going to throw out.
Yeah.
It was so scary. And like checking it every second. Does anyone like this? Anyone tried it? And it's like, now I do it without even thinking.
Yeah.
But it is, putting yourself out there is big. And that fear of being rejected or the fear of being treated differently. And my friendship group did change. It did change because my language, I took a whole different change of career. My language changed, the words I used, the way I think changed. And you say some people just couldn't be with this new version. It's still me, but it was a new version of me.
Yeah.
I think, and it actually can be quite hard to then let go of those people sometimes, but you need to. Just a quick pause to ask for your help. we received wonderful messages on how the podcast is supporting you as leaders and helping to normalise the challenges you face. To help us reach and support more leaders, we'd love your help. If you haven't already, please can you follow or subscribe on the platforms you watch or listen to us on, as it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode.
And people would confuse that new you with arrogance. But all it is liking yourself more, being more confident, being more self-assured. But we're told from when we're very young that the worst thing is to love yourself. Oh my God, she really loves herself. What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is that one of the worst things that you can say about someone? She is okay with who she is. That is a diss.
Yeah.
Legitimately, it's a diss. And there's an amazing video by the School of Life. Adore the School of Life. There's an amazing video called Why Are People So Nasty? And I recommend, if anyone listens to this, I recommend they watch this video. It's like 5 minutes long. And it really simply says that people are nasty because they're in pain. And so if you're having any kind of success, it could be a LinkedIn post that's had 200 likes. Someone could look at that and think, I don't have that. And I fucking hate that I don't have that. And so I'm going to give that woman shit. It happens all the time.
And I thought you see it is about that person. It's not about you. And that helped me to go, this is about that person's pain. Because when I was in the toxic culture, there's a female that was horrendous to me.
Yeah.
And the only way I could cope with it was to go, I heard a saying only hurt people hurt people. And that actually helped me have empathy towards this person to go, you must have had some real shit in your life if this is how you want to treat me.
Yeah.
And it was so lovely. It's actually after this, I'm doing a solo episode. And the solo episode is called The Courage to Love Yourself. Because I went to see Starlight Express last night. And there was an amazing song that says, this is me and this is all I need. And I just sat there and went, because I saw Starlight Express when I was a kid, so seeing it again as an adult, I went, wow, how far I've come. Because I can sit here and go, I love me. And I'm good with that. I'm good with who I am, which I was, for years, I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So it's just lovely that you're seeing it as well. Just, it's okay. And it's also, I used to get embarrassed to say, I love myself. It's a bit like, oh, can you say that?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's so bizarre that there's such an Instagram narrative about loving yourself and being confident, but as soon as you do, it's not okay. And I totally agree with you that sometimes we think it's a failure to let go of friendships when there emerges an imbalance in celebration between two people. But it's absolutely the right thing. I've had to do it over the years too. And it's for the sake of your own, like, this is the thing. And I work with a lot of people who have this epiphany. It's really, really, really okay to celebrate yourself because you fucking live once. You live once. And if you're apologizing for being confident or having a voice or reining yourself in, I know this is such a cliche, just because you're worried about how other people are going to react. But the thing is, I could tell people that and it would fall on empty ears because you have to have that epiphany yourself.
yeah. And when you work with people, I think when you've had it, oh gosh, you just want to give it to everyone. Like,
yes.
please, don't. And as you said, I think there's that book, isn't it? We've got 4,000 weeks to live or something. Or something like that. I don't know if I got that correct. But you just have to go, we don't have that much time.
Yeah.
And I do not want to be my 80-year-old self going, oh, it's a shame I didn't give that a go.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't I? Because when you're 80, and I know my nan didn't give a fuck at 80. She said what she wanted to anyway. But you kind of go, I don't want to find my voice at 80.
Yeah.
I want to find it now, and I don't want to have those regrets. And I think for anyone listening, I'm inspired to sit in here, listening, talking to you. And if anyone's sitting there going, I really want to do this, it's like, and again, you don't have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Go and get some help, go and get some training, go and get some support. I think that's what's helped you and I a lot, and to be able to sit here and talk about it. We've gone out and done the work on ourselves to do what we do.
Yeah.
You don't just sit there one day and go, wake up and go, ooh,
No.
I figured it out. It's all the books you've read, the podcasts, the people you surround yourself with. And what I'd love to know from you is what's next? Where are you taking Good Shout next?
So the one thing I'm desperate to do, and it's been bubbling away for about a year, and I've been trying to work out how to do it. Coming from a working class background, and I would say it's not a competition, but my background was very working class. I think some people say, oh, I didn't go to private school, so I had a terrible upbringing, etc. Coming from a very working class background, you are not told that you can change the world. You're not told that you can be prime minister. You're often not told to command a room. You're taught how to command a room. Communication isn't the priority when you're in a state school. The priority is learn your shit and get your grades. And I am desperate to help people from state schools to learn how to communicate with impact. I think it would make such a massive difference. And where I want to start is with girls. So my one goal for 2025, is that how you say it? 2025?
Yep.
2025 is good chat for girls.
Wow.
There is so much research that says the confidence of girls plummets at the age of 13. Plummets. That's when you become incredibly aware of your body and your hair and everything and being liked and being popular. And that is when girls start to stop talking, particularly in mixed schools.
Yeah.
And particularly from a socioeconomic perspective, or, where we're from in Essex, you have an accent, you have a fucking accent. And I work with so many women in their 30s, their 40s, even their 50s. They hate their voice because they have an Essex accent, or they're from another part of Europe and English is their second language that they've learned inside out, and they give them shit because they have an accent. But that's actually another conversation entirely. Good shout for girls, particularly girls at state schools, particularly girls from socioeconomic areas that need a bit more support. That's it. That's what I want to do.
And what's going to be your first action to get? Because I'm kind of saying this because a lot of people, they have ideas and they don't know what would be that first step. Where do you go, right, I've got this idea, my first step to make this happen is going to be, what would that?
I've spent this year trying to get sponsorship, and that did not work. It didn't work. I think, unless it makes me so disillusioned with the entire world of, I worked in advertising for 20 years. And if I wasn't disillusioned enough with the nonsense of brands already and the lip service and pretending they care about diversity and pretending they care about women every International Women's Day, this year has made me even more disillusioned with brands who claim to care about women and confidence. But then when it comes to money, no, actually, that's a bit too far. So I tried this year to get some funding from brands, didn't work. So I'm going to have to seek funding from elsewhere, because obviously this is something that I have to provide for free. I'm not going to get fucking 13-year-old working class girls to pay $1,000 for it.
So this is a real passion project for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a real calling for you of where to go next.
Yeah, so I think we're going to need to, I've crowdfunded before, and that worked. So that's what we need to do. We need to, from January onwards, we need to crowdfund.
Well, I also know a lot of people who listen to this podcast. There's quite a few companies that listen to this who would be, I know, probably very interested in connecting with your partner. It might not be able to just be a money thing, but something they can do to open some doors or get there for you. So we'll put it in the show notes. But anyone listening now, you're very happy for them to get in touch with you.
Yes, of course.
If they can help.
Yeah. But please don't get in touch asking me for a quick coffee. No. For no reason. I can't do that.
Just say,
as an introvert,
I want to play.
Yeah.
I want to get involved.
As an introvert, I don't know if you feel the same. Meeting up with someone that I've never met just for a coffee is my worst nightmare.
I find it harder because you get asked for so many.
Yeah.
You say yes, but then you feel bad saying to the no, so then you don't want to say no to everyone, but then it's like, what do you do? But then you want to help.
Yeah.
It's like, I know what it's like. People helped me when I was coming up and doing what I'm doing.
Totally.
So it is just balancing that time, isn't it? But yes.
And also, I have a bit of a reputation for being a bitch.
Oh, you said you do piss people off.
Yeah. Oh my God, I piss people off all the time. All the time.
How do you do that?
For having really high I'm not even, I will own my shit, but for having really high standards and for not tolerating nonsense. I only have a limited amount of years left, not because I'm sick or anything, but
you're focused.
Yeah, I've got, same as you probably, I have a list of stuff I want to achieve. I don't want to just dance around and network every day. So, and my company and the experiences that we deliver are literally the most important things in my life. Like I would never, and also we train at any given time, like hundreds of people. Every single one of those people has a voice, has self-esteem, has a sense of self, is trusting us with their emotional baggage in their future. I cannot even risk our standards slipping. Occasionally, where people that have worked for me have slipped those standards, I can't work with them anymore. And so, yeah, I have this lovely reputation for being a bitch.
It seems to have worked.
Yeah, I mean, so be it.
It's also, isn't it, being a bitch, or as you say, it's having high standards and knowing what you want. And it actually is a shame that we have to label that as being a bitch. And just putting it out there, if a man did the same thing, would you call them a bitch?
Oh, he'd be a fucking legend.
Yeah.
He'd be an entrepreneur.
Decisive.
Yeah.
Courageous.
Yes. He'd be a rebellious entrepreneur. Look at how much James Watt is worshipped from Brewdog.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? But for a woman, you're a bitch if you're being direct.
Because you're supposed to mother people. You're supposed to be lovely.
And listen and care.
Yeah.
I could just keep talking to you all day. This has been so insightful, but also such an inspiring conversation. And what I'd love to know is all the experience you've got. What advice would you have given to younger Amy?
How weird that I just got emotional literally when you just said that. And we've talked about this question. I would say to her, I think it's when you think about your younger self, it's such an emotional thing. I would tell younger Amy not to be normal and not even to try. Because we've talked about a bunch of stuff. We've talked about introversion. We've talked about loving yourself. We've talked about, we haven't even really talked about creativity and being weird. And I have a whole thing. I've studied the sociology of weirdness for the last few years now, because I was always called weird when I was a kid, like weird, peculiar, like crazy. I mean, it doesn't help when I do stuff.
I think it's charming.
But for girls growing up, if you're called weird, it's a label that doesn't really serve you and doesn't feel very nice. And I was always, I desperately wanted to be a hermit and just sit around and write my little stories and all of those things. And I would absolutely tell her that not being normal is the best possible thing that you can have in your armory, and to cherish the fact that you are not normal.
I've actually got goosebumps. I can see the emotion in your eyes. Yeah, that's okay. Because I just think that's so touching. And I think in the world where we try and create what is normal, let's just fuck it all up. Let's just stop it. Let's just stop it. It's just like, I am so sitting here wanting to go out and buy your shoes, because I've been the same. I'm like, dress conservative, dress professional, dress how you think you should. And it's also Nishma, when she came to this episode, she wore the most amazing outfit. And I'm desperately now when I shop going, where's the colour? Where are the sequins? I still have that voice going, can you? Will people think you're strange if you suddenly dress like that? And but that's why I'm sitting there going, embracing you and what you bring, and your bows, your lipstick. I'm just sitting here so inspired by who you are to go, I need to go shopping. But I love that sentiment of, let's stop all trying to be normal. Let's stop trying to be what the magazines show us. Yeah. Social media shows us. And I know there's more, we're allowing it more in the world. But I actually think for some people at our age, that wasn't how we were brought up. Yeah. And I love the fact that more younger people now are showing us what can be possible. Yeah. But I think we're still carrying a lot of baggage of being told of what we should be like. Yeah. And I think our generation, our age, it is time to just go, fuck it, let's just embrace the person we really are inside. For the sake of the rest of your life. That's the thing. It's the concept of conformity is an ill. It's conformity as a process was designed to make people easy to control, to make people behave, to make people buy stuff, to make people malleable. And so conformity, normality, all of those things, obviously the way to behave is, especially for little girls, is drummed into you as soon as you're conscious, as soon as you're socially conscious, and it will determine your entire life. I don't know if we'll ever be able to rid the world of normality, but over and above all the other stuff that I do with Good Shout, I'd love to try. why not?
Yeah.
I think that's an awesome goal. It's an amazing goal. And it's saying, if you're starting to do that with yourself, the people you're inspiring that are coming into your world, you know, you've inspired me connecting with you today, sitting here. My brain is just firing off, going, oh, what about this, what about this? So I can only imagine what it must be like to be in a workshop with you and get to work with you. And just thank you for the work you do. I think you are a true inspiration, and I'm so grateful I got to meet you and connect with you.
Cry.
It's all cry. Come on, do it. No, you know, there's just some people you meet and you just go, wow. And that's happened today. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just always want to make sure with the guests, with the conversations, because we don't really have a complete plan of where we're going to go. Like we've spoken about a lot today. We had no idea we were going to talk about. So I just want to is there anything left that you just want to make sure you share or reinforce before we close?
Yeah, there is one final thing. When I'm running workshops about the psychology of voices and public speaking, I always encourage people to think about their voice, because our voices are the manifestation of our backgrounds and our emotions and our experiences and all of those things. And we all take our voices for granted. Most of the time, if you think about your everyday life, most of the time when we speak, we just open our mouths and hope for the best. Something will come out, and I'm sure it'll be fine. And I love people to really think about their voice and what they use it for. And this is an exercise that we do, which anyone listening can totally try. Think about the best thing that you've done with your voice. I ask people that question and they're like, and then they think about it, and then they think about something that makes them immeasurably proud. And I think that's such a nice exercise.
I'm doing that after this.
Yeah, do it. Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty good thing for you to do. Yeah. This feel with your voice. Yeah.
That's true. I'm actually doing it.
Exactly.
So that's so interesting. You don't actually realise sometimes what you're doing, and then actually how it can help people in just the conversation we've had today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't often listen to many of the episodes back, but this one I'm going with a notepad today.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Came through. So thank you, and thank you to everyone listening. And we will see you next week. Take care. If you've been loving our Courageous Leaders podcast, please can I ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps keep the quality content coming and reach listeners like you that we can then really help. We fund this podcast ourselves, so to have your support means that we can keep delivering week on week. Thank you.